welcome to the Potter Families podcast. My name is Adrian. I'm your host. I apologize for the last couple of weeks. Well, actually, last week I missed putting out a podcast. I had some events come up with the family, but that's okay. Now I'm jumping into it. And this week you'll get a double dose. I'm going to be putting out this specific episode regarding home security and how to secure your home. And then later on here in a few more days, I will be putting out another podcast on how to prepare yourself physically, mentally, spiritually for the hardships that are coming. These two podcasts are going to be towards the end of the introductory series. After this, I'll be delving into some more deeper topics, a little bit more nuance to them, specifically going into preparing yourself and your community or your parish for in the event that we need to go underground, in the event that the persecution ramps up from just soft white martyrdom to red martyrdom. And if you don't know the distinction between those two terms, white martyrdom is usually indicated when, say, you lose your job or you lose some type of social status, where there's no life loss, there's no physical harm. And then red martyrdom is, there is some physical harm, or you may even lose your life. So the topics discussed in those will mostly focus on topics that will allow you to more securely meet with other people, or perhaps even if you need to E&E or evade and escape, or do some type of rescue mission on a priest to get him out of the area because they're coming, for our clergy. But like I said, this will be the last couple of. I might do one more after this. These next two on introductory topics, and mostly this is to kind of get you from the crawl, walk, run stage into some of these topics. Because I know some of you don't have a whole lot of experience with some of this. You lived in the suburbs your entire life, or you're just now starting out, and your entire life has revolved around your 9 to 5, or just making your week to week commitments. Some of these things we're going to be going over will be to better prepare you for the hardships and for the difficulties that are going to come. The life that we live now in this relative peace, where you go to the grocery store every 3 to 4 days to get your food for the next 3 to 4 days, and you're able to drive down the street by yourself, and your wife is able to go to the store without worrying about any type of, not that she's completely worry-free, but mostly worry-free of any type of violence happening to her. This isn't an abnormality in history. This relative peace that we're in right now is not the norm. And we are going to be in a really wide world of shock when small things start to happen that shake your worldview. Things that may revolve around the safety of your kids, being outside, which a lot of people already struggle with, with the increased awareness of sex trafficking and child predators. But, even if you live in a nice neighborhood like I do now, I have very, very little worry about my kids playing in the backyard and there being an issue. But one day that's going to not be the case any longer. It's going to be an issue where I'm going to have to be out there with them if they're going to be out in the backyard by themselves. Because we have a thin veneer of security at all times. Even as in this community I'm in, the police are a small fraction of the populace here. So once that security is gone, as you might see in South Africa right now, the police are doing what they need to do to take care of their families. And that means looting and stealing as well. So they have abdicated their responsibilities to the public through their career as a police officer and are worrying about their families first. And when that comes here to the United States, and we're going to see that more in the cities than we will see out in the suburbs or into the rural areas. But when that life comes here due to famine, due to droughts, due to wide swings of the weather, due to hyperinflation, due to war, when these things happen, there's going you're going to find out what kind of community you live in real quick. So I don't want to get too much in a tangential conversation about this, but that's just kind of leading you into where my thought process is on these first introductory style episodes to kind of get you in that easement. Like we're getting you from the shallow end, slowly getting you to the point where you're a little uncomfortable, where the water's up to your nose, and you are starting to get a little bit less comfortable with yourself there, and how to survive in that area that's uncomfortable. And that's going to be a big focus of the next episode after this. But this specific topic, we're going to be going into home security. This one is often it's often not taken seriously by a lot of people, unless you live in an inner city or have lived in an inner city before, and like locked doors and bars on windows are a lifestyle. Yeah, then you're really overlooking some things that allow you to have some peace of mind when you're at home. For example, when I was younger, I lived in a kind of a rough area. It wasn't too bad. We're kind of on the cusp of the inner city. And just to give you an idea, I was districted to go to a inner city high school where I would have been one of maybe 20 white kids in that school. And it was a very rough reputation school. Because inner city schools are not given the resources that they need, or that they even deserve, because they're just overlooked for the more populous areas who have more tax income coming in. So anyway, in that area that I lived in, there was I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old. Might have been a year or two older than that. And a young boy was shot in the head 2 blocks away from my house. They were robbing him. I was mugged on the way home from school one day. I had taken public transportation home, and it was about a 4-block walk home. Let's see. Yeah, it was about 4 blocks. And I had my headphones on and my no skip Discman. That's how long ago that was. And, I got jumped by 4 or 5 black guys. And it was very strange. They took everything out. They took my Walkman. They took some other stuff out of my backpack because I was coming home from school. But I had just bought the new Rob Zombie CD, and they made sure to give that back to me and put their finger in the center of the CD so it would not scratch. But luckily, I had just cashed my paycheck that day as well, so they didn't even check my wallet. So they were not very experienced in the art of thuggery at that point. But that was the kind of neighborhood I grew up in. And, I've got a little bit of an idea of the mindset that you have to be in. And that's not to include, the other areas I've either deployed to in the Marines, or I've lived other places as well. But that just kind of gives you an idea that mindset is going to be completely different than where I live now. We purposely moved to an area now that my kids, we don't have to worry about it. We lived in downtown here in this area for about 18 months. And it's not that there was a whole lot of crime going on. We occasionally hear gunshots, but we lived close to the inner city. We were very close to a university. But we had some more undesirables coming around, such as there was a halfway house for the mentally ill that was less than a few blocks away. And sometimes those people would, I don't know if you call it escape or extend their leisure time or whatever it is, but they would come around and they would local residents would just find them sleeping on their porch, or they would come up and they'd steal something and take it down the block and abandon it. These are people who need mental help and are not getting it. They're given the bare minimum. And also in that area that we lived in for 18 months here, in the downtown area, it was also an area where I had to explain to my then 7-year-old daughter why that lady has a beard. That's not something that a young child should have to figure out, and it should not have to be something that a parent has to explain to them. So we decided to move out of the city into an area that's a lot more family friendly, and I'm very thankful for this area we live in. It's fantastic. I never thought I'd live in an area where I have to have an HOA, but this I did what was I thought best for the kids, and it allows us to be able to live a little bit more anxiety free, I guess is the best way to put it. But choosing, if you're able to choose to where you can live now, that's a blessing. That is a gift that God is giving you in the meantime. Because I don't know if y'all have seen the housing market lately, but we bought at the end of October, and I think that was probably the last sane time to move, to sell and purchase a home, because now you're getting to the point now where you've got to pay $30,000-$40,000 over asking, and you still might be the third best offer, and you're paying way more for a house than it's actually worth. You're being outpriced out of your homes, which is causing people to have to either stay where they don't want to be or move to somewhere where it's a little bit further away from work, or the commute's going to be longer, or they're having to stay with grandparents or parents, and it's causing a lot of issues with families. So where you're at is going to dictate how you secure your home. The first thing I can suggest to you, though, is get to know your neighbors. That is the first sense of securing your home. Find out who your neighbors are, make nice with them, look out for them, have them look out for you. The best way to engender or endear someone to you, do nice things for them that they don't ask you to do. For example, the neighbors on the right and left of me, we don't have a whole lot of front yard grass, and our yards are pretty much synonymous with each other here. They're pretty much melded, so I'm not going to exactly cut a line in my yard and leave him, the guy on the right or left of me, having a tall, front yard. So I'll usually just cut their side of the yard too when I do it, and they've been doing the same for me. So it's pretty much every other week I'm cutting my front yard, and my neighbor to the right or left of me is doing it the odd weeks. And that's just something that it has just been being done between the two of us. I know a couple of the other neighbors down throughout the street. I've gotten to know them a little bit. We have conversations occasionally. I wouldn't say I'm great friends with them. I don't know if I'd invite them to my kids' birthday parties yet. We've only lived here for, was this 8 months? But I'm getting to know them, and that's what you need to do with all of your neighbors. Get to know them, because people who are familiar with you, people who have social equity with you, is going to be harder for them to conduct some type of undesired action against you, right? If someone is familiar with your kids and they're familiar with you and you've gone out of your way to help them, that is not going to be the first person I look at if someone stole a bike out of my front yard, right? Because you know them, and you've gotten to know them a little bit, and that distance and that disassociation with you is not there, to where it allows them to conduct and act like that. So that's going to be your first act. You need to get to know your neighbors, absolutely. That way, if something happens to your house, they're keeping an eye out for you. For example, the other day, a neighbor that was three houses around the cul-de-sac from me, he left for the day, and he left his garage door open. And I'm sure it was on accident. So, and my office looks out into the cul-de-sac. So I made sure to keep an eye on his house throughout the day. He doesn't know that, right? But if something happened, I would have told him, or I would have kept it from happening, either or. And just that small action is going to give me, like I said, social equity with him. Then he's going to know that, hey, I can depend on him. I want to make sure he can depend on me as well. And that's not always going to be guaranteed. Sometimes you get people who just don't care. But it gives a whole lot less chance of happening. The next thing is the first thing I do when I move into a new house, and I suggest that you do it as well. You need to reinforce the entrances into your home. So if you have a front door and a back door, or say you have a front door, a back door, and a garage door that comes in from the garage, or even a basement door, any entrance that comes into your home, you need to reinforce. How do you do that? When a door is installed on your home, you have the trim that goes around that basically encases the door. And then you might have like a door jamb of some sort, some type of thin piece of wood that is then placed in there. And then the door is, the hinges are drilled into it, the trim. And then you have on the other side, you have your strike plate where your doorknob hits, and the strike plate where your deadbolt hits. All of these are put in place normally with no more than a 3/4 inch screw. So that means if someone were to kick in your door, the only thing keeping them out of your house through that entranceway specifically is going to be those 3/4 inch screws, because all it's going is to the trim. That trim is very thin. So the first thing I do is I replace all of those screws. I replace all those screws with 3-inch galvanized screws, because this 3 inches gets past the jamb, gets past the trim, and gets into the 2x4 frame of the door. That allows a whole lot more stability. You're not going to kick that door in. You're going to have to cut that door out, or you're going to have to bust a window or go at it with an axe or something, depending on the type of front door you have. If you have a insulated steel door, they're not kicking that. They're not getting through that doorway. Or if you have a solid wood door, they're going to have to go at it with an axe or something. Or it's going to be more expedient for them to find another entrance into your home. You need to do that with every one of those entranceways, every single one of your doors. You can get a bucket of 3-inch galvanized screws from Lowe's or Home Depot for I think I got my bucket for $12. And it's way more screws than I needed, so I'm going to use them for other projects later in the future. But, that is going to be the first thing you need. It's cheap. It's quick. It took me 3 minutes a door. It takes no time whatsoever. And if someone is trying to get into your house, they're going to do the most expedient way that allows them to make out with as much of your goods as possible. They're going to go through a door, right? The next option they're going to do is they're going to try and come through a window, which leads me to my next point. You have 2 layers of security here on windows. One, you always need to make sure your windows are locked, especially ground level windows, because that's going to be the most likely entrance that someone makes if they can't get past your door. Make sure your ground level windows are always locked. Even if you like them to open up in the fall evenings to allow fresh air in at night, or if you're not in that room, you need to keep that window closed and locked. And after that, your 2 layers are going to be the first layer is going to be, you can either replace the windows, which is a very expensive endeavor, with something that's a little bit more security conscious, such as plexiglass or something else. Otherwise, you can get this film that goes on your windows. 3M makes it. It's a security style film that it works much like laminate in windshields, right? And what it does is it keeps that window intact and doesn't allow it to shatter into a bunch of pieces if someone tries to break into it. So it's not going to be as loud. So if you have a security system that has a glass break notification, I don't know if it's set that off. But it does make it a lot more difficult for someone to bust out that window and get into your home. A secondary effect from that film is it helps with heat costs as well. Most of the time they reduce up to 60% of the heat coming in through that window. And it also can tint it to where someone can't look into the house. So there are some other effects from that. So that film, you can do a search on 3M's website for a local deal, and they'll come out and do it. It's like paying somebody to tint your windows on your car. It is exactly how it's done. You may be able to find it at say Lowe's or something and do it yourself as well, but that's going to be your first layer of security on your windows, and that's in the event that should be your everyday option for your windows. Lock the windows, and if you can afford it, get that film put on there. In the event that we get to a point where things are a little bit more non-permissive, at that point you need to do like most of the people in Florida and other hurricane areas, and get plywood to go over your windows. Finding the right amount and plywood cost has come down substantially as well in the last couple of weeks, honestly. Before that, you're looking at $12 for a 6 by 8 foot plank of plywood, and that's not even good plywood. That's like OSB. That's like cardboard style plywood. But getting cutouts to put over your windows, and I suggest you do it from the inside. That allows another layer. That way, you can harden up those entranceways, in the event that we're in a more non-permissive area, such as in that first episode when I talked about when Selco was going over, his area and what was going on where they couldn't even go out in the street without worrying about getting hit by a sniper. That would be a non-permissive area. You cannot go out without worrying about your safety. If it comes to that point, then having those covers for your windows is going to provide a lot of security for your household. Because those windows are basically just a giant hole in your house that has a thin piece of glass between you and someone wanting to do you harm. So those are going to be I know I said it's 2 layers, but it's really 3. First layer is going to be make sure your windows are locked, especially ground level windows. Second layer is going to be purchasing that film to put on there. Either you have someone professionally install it or do it yourself. The third one is going to be having wood cutouts to cover your windows that you can take down and put up easily. That way, you could do it. Say if you're leaving the house for a while and you're coming back later, it's not going to completely mitigate someone coming into the house, but it's going to deter them a little bit. If someone absolutely wants to get into your house and they are driven to get in there, you're not going to be able to stop them. They're going to get into your house, especially if you live in a house that has vinyl siding. I was a firefighter for about 4 or 5 years, and one of the ways we get into a house, because the only thing between the outside and the inside on a vinyl sided house most times is the vinyl siding, a little bit of insulation, the framing of the house, like the 2x4s, and then drywall. So we used to go through the side of the house with a K12 tool, which is it's like a big circular saw basically. And even then, if we didn't have a K12 saw, we would just use an axe. You can go right through a house. It takes no time whatsoever to get through that and get in between those studs. So like I said, if someone wants to get into your house, they're going to get in. And at that point, it becomes a castle doctrine style affair. So after windows, you're going to want to look at establishing some type of perimeter that you always have a view on, right? This is, you could do this before windows as well if you wanted to, but putting up cameras, I highly suggest. If you can do it, I suggest wired cameras as opposed to wireless. The reason being is it is very simple for someone to be able to get into your Wi-Fi and pick up Wi-Fi cameras. If anyone has any children and they have a monitor, that monitor is easily hacked into. There has been instances, and all you have to do is do a basic, internet search for child predators who have hacked into monitors to view children by just being in, within 100 feet of your house, depending on whatever the range of your monitor is. So a wireless system is not going to be as preferable as a wired system. Now, a wired system is more than likely going to need to be connected to a recording system of some sort, where you have maybe like a 2 terabyte storage facility for all those videos to go in, and maybe it dumps every 36, 48 hours or something. But that's going to be more preferable. But then you're dealing with running wires through walls and such like that. That's not as expedient, and you can get those at Sam's or Costco for anywhere between $300 to $500 for like 7 cameras. So it's not cheap, but it's an expense that's worth saving up for. And then in the event that you need wireless, there are companies out there and that provide wireless cameras that are cheap, right? But keep in mind, these are all made in China. And China has been known to Trojan horse some software or other hardware into things in order to be able to still have access to it. Just do an internet search engine for the Lenovo incident with the U.S. Department of Defense. The Department of Defense used Lenovo laptops for a long time, and then it was found out they were using keyloggers that was going right back to China. So a lot of these products that come from China, keep that in mind. Ring cameras owned by Amazon, be careful which ones of those you get, because some of those cameras have a radio capability into them, where I think they call it like the Amazon Mesh Network or something, where it's constantly projecting radio waves that basically creates a mesh network amongst all Amazon products, such as what is it, like the Dot or whatever. I don't have any of these, these homes or these other, like the Apple Home and all that other stuff, because I don't, want these companies listening to my every conversation. But they have created them and they put them in years ago. So even if you bought them like 2016 and 17 when they were first coming out, they were in at that time. They just weren't used. But they have radio frequency capability where they are constantly projecting radio waves, which allows them to constantly have access to your system, whether you are using it or giving access or not. But some of these Ring cameras, like the stick-up cameras, you can put literally anywhere. You can attach them to a tree. You can attach them to concrete. You don't have to have access to power because they run on a battery system, and the batteries run for like 2 to 3 months, and they do quite well. But they're also run through Wi-Fi. So you have to be cognizant of the fact that having these in your house, the security capabilities for you might be outweighed by the vulnerability of having those cameras connected to your Wi-Fi. I am not a technical guru any longer. I was very adept at it earlier, back when we used to have, what was it, 19.2 modems, right? Or what was it? I think it was 14.4 when I first got into it. And then it got to 19.2. And then after that, we started getting like DSL and stuff. But back when you had to know how to troubleshoot your own computer, just on a day-to-day basis, now, if your computer's not working, then you can just get rid of it and it's easily replaceable. But nowadays, I'm not as savvy, but you need to be able to secure your Wi-Fi at your house if you want to reduce the chances of that vulnerability being taken advantage of. So, to these cameras, you need to put in cameras to keep an eye on any blind spots around your house. For example, you need one coming out from the front of your house so you can see someone coming, and any other area around your house that you cannot see. And I would suggest having one on all 4 corners. That might require more cameras than you can afford, and that's fine. But you need to prioritize around your house where they're going, and then slowly get them as you can. I would prioritize looking out from the front of the house first, and then after that, I would prioritize looking towards the rear of your home, and then after that, place cameras to any ground level entrances into the home, looking down. And you can usually use one camera at a time to cover each side of the house, right? So you put it at a corner, say on the back of your house, looking from west to east. That way it covers all the back windows, It can cover any entrances you have in the back of the house. And then, from that same pole, you can then look towards the north of the house, right? And you can cover all the windows along that wall that allows entrance into the home from the ground level. And this way you can keep the risk of blind spots down. That way you can keep an eye on everything that's going on. And some of these cameras have the capability for detection of faces as well. That way, it's not just going to pick up dogs and cats and birds and deer and everything else. It might, if you pump up the sensitivity on it, you could detect those things. We had an issue in our garden where we have a bird feeder, and one day we came out and it was tumped out, and the bird seed was all over the ground. So I pumped up my sensitivity to see. I'm assuming it's either a raccoon or a possum that got into it, but I wanted to catch it, right? And I've left it ever since. So now, because the sensitivity is so high, and that critter hasn't come back, but because the sensitivity is so high, it's picking up. We have a solar shade out there that kind of can get caught in the wind a little bit, and it'll pick up that sensitivity. It's only like a deviation in the wind of like probably 3 or 4 inches, but it picks it up, right? You can always increase the sensitivity on it to do that. If you live in an area where you have a long avenue of approach to your house, like a long driveway, you could also, if you have the capability to extend your Wi-Fi out that far, you could set up a camera out there like on a tree. Like one of those Ring cameras, you can literally just attach it to a tree. And as long as it'll pick up your network, if you use an extender to get out there, you'll be able to view it. That might be a better scenario for you than running a long cable for you as well. But that way you can see who's coming in and exiting your property. You can always set up a device that uses the lasers from garage door openers, that the safety mechanism. That way it keeps it from coming down on kids. You could use that to then trigger a camera turning on, or it might trigger, say, your doorbell, right? You can set it up to where that way, if you have a long avenue of approach or a long driveway or something, when someone passes that threshold, it then lets you know, hey, someone's coming onto your property through your driveway, right? Which is going to be the most likely area that they're coming onto your property, unless you have multiple avenues to your property from, say, like an adjacent highway or street or something where they can get to your property from the back way. But that's where your cameras come in that are looking out from the back of your house. So being able to keep an eye on, or at least be alerted to, when someone is coming near your property is going to give you a heads up in case you need to do anything. Or, maybe you need to lock the doors. Maybe you need to be prepared for somebody who's coming that you didn't expect or who is unwelcome. But that gives you that mental head start before they get there. All right, guys. So I think I'm gonna cut this off here. This is pretty much the what I wanted to go over with home security. These are some of the pressing issues that everyone needs to do for their property. But there are other things that you could always do as well, and there are some other suggestions I may put up as well if you got a little bit more money to put into it. But these are things that anybody can do. The reinforcing the doors, that costs you maybe $10 and 10 minutes of your time, right? And then from there it gets a little bit more expensive. But these are things that you can progressively do. You don't have to do it all at once, but do it as you can to provide that security for yourself, so you can keep an eye out and you can protect your family in the event of escalating chaos. All right, so I'm gonna cut this off here. I was gonna do the next show on embracing the hard times that are coming, but I think I'm gonna do a continuation of this this topic a little bit, and we'll go into some things like firearms, maybe a little bit of medical. I do have a little bit of experience as a firefighter paramedic for a number of years. So I can go a little over that. And then physical fitness as well. That'll be in the next episode. And I'll put that out probably another day or two. Who knows? I might be able to knock it out today and get it out tonight. But thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it. I know that, right now I've got maybe like 10 people who watch this. But if I can just reach one person and give them some ideas, or give them the peace of mind knowing that there's something that they can do, this is it completely validates what I'm trying to do here. I guess is the best way I'm trying to say that. I'm not doing this for any other reason other than, to share the knowledge that I have through my experience to help people who don't have that. So if y'all have any questions about anything, feel free to get a hold of me. Go to my webpage, madeforcombat.com. I've got a blog on there I haven't updated in a couple of years, but once you have 4 kids and you work from home, it becomes a little bit harder to write anything. But you can get a hold of me there. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at Headrush. That's HEADRUSCH. That's my @ on Twitter. Either way, if y'all have any questions about anything, feel free to get a hold of me, and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. And if I don't know the answer, I'll point you in the area of someone who does. All right, guys. So y'all take care.